uh, look forward to some takeaways, some kind of knowledge updation which is going to happen from these expert panelists who are here, and of course Vivek, who is going to poke and probe into what all things which we would like to hear from them. And let me hand over the session to Vivek so that he can take it forward. Thank you so much, and have a very productive evening to each one of us. Thank you, Vivek, and over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. President Madhav, most distinguished and eminent delegates and speakers who are present here, very warm good evening to all of you. At the outset, let me formally congratulate my good friend Madhav and Honorary Secretary Jomon for taking over the leadership reins of KMA after a very successful stint under the presidency of Jibu Paul. Madhav has assumed charge, and he is somebody who has done so many wonderful things, and in virtually every organization he's been just come out of his Rotary governorship, and so he's very much in the heat of leadership mood, and we just got him very much here. As soon as he finished one, we got him to take over so that he doesn't get even a day's rest. And as always, a slew of mega events have been planned. The formal inauguration is yet to come, but before that, he wanted to organize a session which would be of real, genuine, practical relevance to each one of us present here, and the kind of participation which we have just goes to show that the topic which he has identified is absolutely bang on, and we've been very fortunate to get some of the finest speakers who will talk to us on the various aspects of the impact all across. Trust me, every KMA member and every MSME owner, every professional, every manager, all of us are going to be greatly benefited by this session, because we have people who are, and personally we know all these all the speakers here, and we know the kind of value they are going to add. So my humble request to all the delegates would be to kindly be involved in this session, interact as much as possible, throw your questions out. You have a chat box here. We will certainly try and take up all your questions, and we would like to wind up by 7. Many of us here are very keen to watch the match at 7:30, so we wouldn't want our session to go on beyond the slated time. So we will ensure that within the time that we have set, we will all deliver to the best of our ability. So without further ado, let me just talk for 2 minutes about the topic, and then we will listen to the speakers. Now, this whole COVID-19 scenario has really thrown open a different world of thinking. I think all of us being present here in such large numbers, sitting in our own homes from all parts of the country, and being able to meet and interact and talk about various aspects is itself the first task. And I'm sure Dinesh will be throwing more light on the technology side. Now, when you look at the statutory side of it also, there have been so many developments which have happened, so many schemes which have been announced. All the Nirmala Sitaraman came out with so many different pronouncements and announcements. We heard PM Modi at different points in time talking about Atmanirbhar and the moratorium when it comes to the loans, or the interest on interest waiver, where the Supreme Court also had to come in and nudge the government. So many things which have happened in the last 5-6 months are things which we could not have imagined would happen. And if we were to have this seminar 7-8 months earlier on Let Us Remain Updated, that is a topic, a very nice marketing caption which our president has chosen. I think it's most appropriate. If we were to talk about it in the month of February, we would all have been talking in a very, very different tangent. But today, sitting in the month of November, having absorbed the effects and after effects of COVID, and having understood how we can all live, survive, and do business very effectively, now I think it's a good time for us to be sharing. Initial months, even we weren't sure when we were sharing experiences, but today I think we are in a more balanced and matured state of business and economic activity. So this is really a good time for all of us to be discussing on various aspects. I personally do have some views on that, which I will try and supplement either during the panel discussion or as a matter of summing up the session. But today it is important that we give more time to our speakers. So our format, as discussed with all the speakers, is that each speaker will speak for roughly 10-12 minutes on their domain area on which they have we have requested them to speak on. Thereafter, the panel will have some questions interstate, and then we will throw out the floor will be open for questions. As far as possible, we will go with the chat room approach, and probably 2-3 questions we may be able to take in person. So let me start first by introducing our first speaker. And right now, what is most important is that we hear from the banking expert. Mr. Srikumar Nair is coming into KMA for the first time. He's a veteran in the banking field, and his wide, varied experience, having served in 2 of the most respected banking institutions in public and private sector. He served in State Bank of India, and he served in HDFC for almost 25 years in almost all the departments: retail banking, wealth management, branch level, sales management, digital transformation, and you name it. In virtually every avenue of banking, he has served with both these giant institutions which we all respect. And thereafter, the entrepreneurship bug bit him, and he has moved and started his own venture, which is into skilling and consulting, and is the founder and CEO of Big C. And it will be very, very interesting for all of us to listen to what he has to say. Over to you, Mr. Shikma.
Okay. Thank you, Vivek. Thanks to KMA, first of all, for giving me this opportunity. Like I think Mother was saying, this is the first time that I am into KMA meeting, and thanks to all of you for giving me this opportunity. So just like somebody was saying also about technology and how it has enabled things, and probably it has made me easier to participate sitting in Bangalore and then join one of the KMA meetings. So I will try and see how I can curtail this into a 10 to 12 minute kind of summary as to some pointers, and then I leave it open to for all of us to discuss and debate if we want to discuss and debate any particular area in that. So I see some 7-8 very relevant things that has changed in the world of banking and the world around it. Because banking at the end of the day is the backbone of any economy, and somewhere it is also the mirror of the economy. Not just that it's the backbone of the economy, it is also the mirror of the economy. If the banking sector in the country is doing well, you know that the country's economy must be doing well at the back end. So if the banking sector is not doing well, somewhere the economy must also not be doing well. So it's both the backbone as well as the mirror of the economy. Now, we all know that the Indian banking industry has this unique problem of having a very real and large problem of NPAs. Now, it is not possible for us to think about anything in the Indian economy as any solution unless you have a solution for this problem of NPAs. So currently, among all the large economies in the world, the NPA ratios in this country is currently probably number 2 from the bottom. As in, there was a study done by a rating agency which looked at some 34 large economies, and according to them, India's NPA ratio close to about 10% when it was measured. RBI says that by March, it should reach a figure of about 12.5%. That's not a very healthy sign. So it brings us to the absolute rock bottom of where the NPA ratio can be. So that is something which all of us start by appreciating that there is a real problem in the industry. Now, if you know, the Indian banking sector is largely owned by Government of India. So there is a very large visible presence of public sector banking. There is a very large segment of private sector banks that have come over the last 25 odd years, and that has kind of captured some amount of the market, but there is still a substantial amount of business that is still with the public sector banks. And therefore, if the banking industry has to change, somewhere that change has to become visible in the PSU banks. Now, as per Moody's estimates, if the NPA problem has to be resolved, there has to be a lot of capital that has to be pumped into the PSU banks. And Government of India will need to pump in roughly about 2 lakh crores over the next 2 years. And that's a figure which is beyond the government's capacity. You know that even in this year's budget, there is something like 20,000-30,000 crore that they're budgeted for capital infusion into banks. So that's way below what banks can manage with. You know, banking is one specific industry where unless capital is there, for every loan that you give, there is a risk-weighted asset, basis a risk weightage for each of those assets that I give, I have to build up my capital accordingly. So unless I build up my capital, my capacity to lend goes down. And if I am not a profitable bank, if my NPA ratios are high, unless the owner of my company is willing to pump in that much money, I will not be able to. So that's one real problem that all of us must keep in mind. So what is probably going to happen in the banking sector, and which could impact all of us as industrialists or as students or as MBA colleges or as bankers, all that, the big in the banking industry will become bigger. Uh, Now, it's a statement which is probably well known, but then please appreciate the fact that in any other industry you may want to look at, you will see the majority of the market share is held by 2 or 3 banks, 2 or 3 institutions. So let's look at telecom. There are some 3, 4 players in that market. Let's look at automobile. Then you see, if you take a Maruti itself, that's close to 50%. You look at two-wheeler industry, you have some 3, 4 major players. You look at FMCG, you look at any particular segment, and you will find some 3, 4 large players occupying the bulk of the market share. Now, banking is unlike any of them. So we have one State Bank of India, which is roughly about 25% of the market share. I don't know the exact figure, but then anybody else below State Bank of India is at less than 10%. So there is a very large number of small institutions. And that is also something which is reducing the capacity of the banks to lend. Now, I'll give you one more statistics just to reinforce that point of view. Economic survey, when it came out this year along with the budget, when the chief economic advisor tabled it in the parliament, there is this talk of India becoming a $5 trillion economy. And if India has to become $5 trillion economy, as per the chief economic advisor, India needs to have at least 8 large banks in the top 100 globally. And you know, currently we have just one, which is State Bank of India, and which is ranked number 55. So out of the top 100 banks globally, and that is on the asset book size. So this is measured only on the asset book size. So based on the asset book size, we have just one Indian bank amongst the top 100 globally. China has 19, so that will give you a perspective. The top 4 banks in the world are all Chinese, right? Forget about China. You look at a small country like South Korea has something like 6 or 8 banks. So India, as per the chief economic advisor, if India has to become a $5 trillion economy, we need to have at least about 8 banks in the top 100, which just means that the banking business has to boom. And currently it is constrained by the NPA percentage that we have today at this point in time. So there is no other solution rather than thinking that how to build this larger bank into even larger banks. Somewhere we will have to start as a country, start thinking about reprivatization. So there is that thing which Indira Gandhi did about government taking over all the private sector bank, but probably it's about time that we start thinking about privatization of the PSU banks. That's probably the way forward. So I leave it at that. I move on to the second item, which is specifically related to the COVID and what happened because of COVID. There is this talk of interest on interest, and most of the banks would have probably done it by now. So November 5th was kind of the timeline that RBI wanted them to follow and ensure the difference between the simple interest and the compound interest is repaid back to every single borrower below that 2 crore limit that they had set. So that is something which has probably happened. But there are 3 specific problems which somewhere all the business people and the bankers will have to take it into their stride. One is there was a regulatory nudge from RBI that look at increasing the working capital limit of every possible customer. So they said instead of a 25% margin, try and reduce it to 10% on the net current assets. So many banks followed that, many borrowers would have taken that. But there was a sunset date. As on 1st of April next year, the banks will be asked to reverse back to that 25% margin for the promoter. And where is the promoter going to bring in that money, right? So either he has to make a very large profit now to bring in that kind of money. So that is something which all of us need to be aware of. So industry has a problem, the banks have a problem. The second one is there is the impact of write down in the, let's say, the asset holding. So the drawing power could come down. There could be inventory which is held, which is of probably lower value because of lesser sales over the last 6 months and so on. Now there has been no valuation of those inventory in the interim period. You will see re-evaluation of those valuation and stuff like that, and you will see drawing power starting to come down. The third one that again will become visible from 1st of April next year will be all this deferred interest that has accumulated that has to be converted into a term loan. Again, the repayment of that has to start. Now, do we have the capacity to repay that? And if the borrowers don't have the capacity to repay that, what is going to happen to the NPA ratios that currently anyway is a big problem for the banks? So that is another item. I'll leave it on the table. Third one is there is this constant news that keeps floating around that banks are not passing on the interest rate benefits. That RBI keeps reducing the interest rates, whereas banks are not passing on the interest rate reduction. As an ex-banker, let me take the side of the bank and then take it from that perspective. That look at the I remember about 30 years back, we had, let's say, a home loan rate available at something like 19-20%, right? Today, you are getting a home loan. So I saw Kotak Mahindra Bank publishing as part of their quarterly report that they are offering a home loan at 6.75%. Now, 6.75% a home loan. If you save that money in a Sukanya Samriddhi scheme with the post office, you get 7.6%. So imagine a situation where a deposit in the safest instrument, which is the Government of India instrument, or let's say a PPF at something like 7.1% or so, a home loan is available at 6.75% today. So it is not about banks' unwillingness to pass on the benefit of the interest rate structure. Somewhere industry will also have to think that are they giving enough viable proposals? Now, why are banks running after home loan? They're safer, there is repayment. And if the banks already have a problem of NPA, would the bank want to take the risk of doing something in that line? So this is something which keeps coming up. So I thought I will touch upon that. There is a certain sense that banks are not lending and therefore economic activity is not happening. I am of the view that economic activity is down, there is lesser demand in the market, and therefore there are less projects coming up, and therefore banks are not lending. It is not a question of the reverse phenomena. Unless there is enough demand, how as an industry you will want to invest in something? And unless you are willing to unless you have a viable project where you know at the end of the day that you will have buyers for your product, therefore you don't have a project accordingly, and therefore there is no viable project for the bank to fund. Second, that's my thought. I again leave that point. Let me move on to one more subject which has become very critical after this COVID. Now, what has happened because of COVID is a sudden realization that the world can turn around, turn upside down overnight, and something new can suddenly flash up. Now, it's not something, COVID may be something unique, but it also made bankers realize that it is not just COVID. Look back upon the last few years, how, let's say, various innovations have taken over the market. And there was once the various studies on how, let's say, what did a Sensex look like 30 years back? What kind of companies did it have 25 years back? So what kind of companies do they have now? Look at the biggest companies that are there in the Sensex today. Look at people like Infosys, look at HDFC Bank, look at ICICI Bank, look at Kotak Mahindra Bank, look at various companies which were never in existence at that point in time. So what is happening is that the industry needs to be very agile and flexible. They need to change. So if a particular business, you know what is happening to, let's say, a hospitality industry because of COVID. So if the industry is not agile enough, so we keep talking as bankers, we keep talking about this to job seekers, people, potential employees, that employees need to be agile and they need to be reskilling themselves. But somewhere the thought has to be extended to even the entrepreneurs, that it is not necessary that the line of business that you are into will survive for too long. So you will have to be ready to redesign your project and to completely move into something else. There could be disruptive technology in every field, including in the field of banking, by the way. So it is, so that is one more item that I want to leave on the table. The next is on the job seekers, because there is, bank is a very large employer. So amongst the let's say the core industries in India, so taking services sector also as an industry, banking is probably the single largest employer in terms of headcount that gets added into the banking sector. So I saw a study by Care Ratings and Ace Equity, which said that 21% of the hiring, the headcount distribution, the addition in headcount distribution happens in banking. And if you add finance into it, that's another 5.5%, whereas IT takes only about 20%. So 26.5% goes into banking and finance, right? So it is a very large employer. And unless the employment in the economy goes up, there are not enough buyers for any other industry also. From that sense, also banking is a very large, important segment within this country. And what is happening in the employment sector is, one, about reskilling, because what people were traditionally taught to do in banking is learn Negotiable Instrument Act, learn Banking Regulation Act. I have joined as a probationary officer in State Bank of India. I learned it the hard way, right? You learn what is Section 131 of NI Act, not just that, but you of course learn every other act there. But then today, that is not what is required on the ground. What is required on the ground is customer engagement, is about relationship building, is about identifying his needs and then fulfilling those needs. Are people coming out from colleges skilled enough to do that? So that is one area which everybody, the entire ecosystem has to think and find a solution for that. Parallel to that is what the colleges need to do about that. So about job skilling and stuff like that. Last, if I were to come to, that's the bank per se. Now the banks themselves have...
Mr. Srikumar, I'm sorry, let me just interrupt you. What we will do is we will take some views from some of our other panelists and take up your points during the course of our panel. You have very elaborately covered most of our areas of concern, starting from moratorium to the the accumulation of interest onto term loan, etc. But I'm sure there are a few more queries which some of our members would have. So let's listen to our next speaker, who is CA Jomon George. Again, a very eminent member of the chartered accountancy profession with almost 3 decades of experience. He's just stepped down as the chairman of the Southern India Regional Council, which is about close to 60,000 chartered accountant members. He was the head of the SIRC, as we call it, in Institute of Chartered Accountants, and active in so many other organizations. So what we will request him to do is to talk from the perspective of the compliance angle. There are a lot of due dates which have been extended, and there is a little bit of confusion regarding some of these, and we constantly get calls from many of our friends in specific doubts. So he will talk from a compliance angle, and I'm sure again during the course of discussion there will still be more queries. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Vivek. Respected President of KMA, my very dear friend, Madhav Chandran, co-panelists, Mr. Srikumar, Mr. Damodar, and past President of KMA, the IT expert, Mr. Dinesh Thambi, illustrious past presidents of KMA, MC members, and my dear friends. I'm delighted to be with you this evening. The first ever program of KMA. As the president rightly said, I'm in a dual role as a secretary and today as a panelist and a speaker. It's a great pleasure to be in the company of subject experts and to share a few of the thoughts rather or information which we have on the compliance front and taxation front in this difficult times. So we are deliberating at a time when things have really gone out of control, and everyone in their own way and in obligations finding it difficult to manage. So the pandemic is not getting contained. The impact is very huge. So in that backdrop, I would probably go through very specific aspects of the relaxations which have come our way, as well as new schemes which have come our way to enable the businesses to move forward. And that is the topic which specifically given to us because there are specific verticals on banking, IT, MSME, and therefore I'm here purely on taxation and compliance. With that introduction, thanking Madhav and Vivek for giving this opportunity. Let me move on to my presentation. I hope, Vivek, the slide is visible. Thank you. So we have been masked, so has been the economy. And the impact of the economy is really huge. IMF's latest finding is that the India's GDP would contract, shrink by 10.3% in the financial year 21. So our economy is approximately a $3 trillion economy, 2.94 to be precise. That's going to shrink by 10%, which is really shaking. Added to that is the loss of jobs and associated issues with that. So what is the need when it comes to the regulator or the country or the leaders of the nation or the thought leaders, what they should do ideally in a situation like this? A situation like never before has been well said by a very revered economist, a former RBI governor, very revered C. Rangarajan, who said the government of India must provide lifelines to businesses, extend loans and tax waivers, which I have highlighted because that is my topic, to small businesses and the self-employed to retain staff, give direct support to severely affected industries, and provide more funds to states, tax waivers, even to households, as our president mentioned in his introductory remarks. And let's see what has been done. A lot has been done, but going by what the other nations across the globe have done, I think a lot more needs to be done. So let's have a quick look at the tax-related provisions, what are the relaxations which have come. It started off with the reduction in the rates of TDS. Tax deduction at source is something which is a very integral part of our tax regime. And there, whatever said and done, the amounts held back as tax deductions would have an impact on the working capital availability of small as well as every businesses. And therefore, there was the first decision was to reduce the rate of TDS by 25% from the existing rates. So for us professionals like me, Vivek, and many of the professionals would know that under 115J, there is a rate of 10%. So from that time till now, as we go on until separately notified, the deduction stands reduced from 10% to 7.5%. This may sound small, but look at the economy as a whole. The amount which is coming to the service providers or the people who are rendering services essentially stands increased. So the availability of working capital is a huge challenge. So that was step one. And the next one is the delays in payments because of the working capital crunch, advance tax, self-assessment tax, which is to be paid while you file your return, tax deducted source, tax collected source, securities transaction tax, commodities transaction tax, all that had to be paid. But if there have been delays from 20th March, that is the time we went into a lockdown, and till 31st July, that should ideally get extended, will be charged at a reduced rate. That due date is over. I think that would again be extended at a reduced rate of 9% instead of 12% per annum. So there are technicalities being taxed. I hope the participants would understand and appreciate in that spirit. President did highlight on the extended due dates. 18-19 financial year. We are now in 2021. We have come past 1920, where we are in the process of filing tax returns. We are helping you do that as practicing chartered accountants or financial consultants. But we are talking about, again, 1 year back, 18-19, the original actual date of filing was 31st March of 2020, which was extended to September. And if some of you have not filed, you still have time till 30th November. I'm talking about financial year 18-19. Due date for payment of self-assessment tax for taxpayers whose self-assessment tax liability is up to 1 lakh is extended to 30th November 2020. Here again, when timelines for tax filing gets extended, in many years that happens, maybe sometimes due to flood, sometimes due to other calamities or reasons which are justifiable, dates get extended, but the additional tax liability on your tax, interest liability on your tax payment gets accumulated. So here the second bullet point is to suggest that the interest, which is technically speaking under 234A and all that, would start counting only from ticking from 1st of December only. That may also get extended further because the pandemic is still not contained. PAN and Aadhaar linking. Today, everything is about data. government is very particular to have, and I'm sure that you know about the JAM Trinity, which is the Jandan accounts, the Aadhaar and the mobile, with all that connectivity and with more of internet penetration into the rural India, or Gandhiji famously said, the India that lives in its villages, that will surely get linked to the mainstream. And with that, this linking is very important. So going to be mandatory, otherwise some of our transactions might get stuck. Therefore, that also is now extended to 31st March 2020. So as Mr. Rangarajan envisaged, the government is trying to give relaxations in the sense that probably more time, because today going to an office or even coordinating things, getting people together has become very, very difficult. And I'm now in South Karnataka, where I think I'm seeing completely different scenario from Kerala. I was in Sulya yesterday. On the way down here, we stayed in Sulya yesterday. It's a small town. They hardly see anyone wearing a mask. So people, I think, have accepted that we need to live a normal life. Learning to live with COVID, I don't know whether that really makes sense from a medical point of view. Going on, we have to, today, everything is linked. Earlier on, we used to insist on getting Form 16. Some of you are in employment, some of you self-employed people. All now, that Form 16 is not mandatory in the right sense of it, because on the government's tax portal, you log in, have your right login, and you will surely get all that you won't have, how much tax has been deducted, what's your income. And you might get surprises saying that the FDs that you forgot taxes been deducted by banks, and you would get it in your Form 26AS, all that. So filing tedious quarterly returns of tax deducted source by the deductors, so the deductives will also benefit, is now extended. That is Q1 and Q2. That is quarter ended June 2020 and quarter ended September 2020 is now extended to 31st March 2020. In the same spirit, for sure, I'm making a wishful thinking here. Q3 and Q4 will also get extended. GST is, we have a huge change, most revolutionary tax regime in independent India, the tax reform rather, not regime, the reform, subsuming about 10 indirect taxes, which are very difficult to comply with. And today we are having teething troubles. I had some experience in the Middle East when UAE was going into the VAT regime. Though they call it a VAT, it is again GST. It is a service on goods and services, a tax on that. It is so simple, the Federal Tax Authority, as compared to what we have in here. But that's a small place. That's a very infant country with lesser number of transactions, all those things. But there's only 1% of this thing, 5%, which is as per the GCC agreement. The long story is about that. So here, the goods and services tax have come to stay, and we have started living with GST. Now, from April onwards, if you're not having, because many of our businesses have come to a grinding halt. Take, for example, tourism-related industries in Kerala. Slowly, it's picking up. But people are talking about GST. Another thing which probably all of us would contradict is that last month, the October GST collections exceeded 1 lakh crore, which is an indication that, the economic activity is bouncing back to kind of pre-COVID normals. And also that the toll collections on our highways, because that is about the goods and people moving around in spite of the restrictions we have, is that, that's also on the rise. So again, on automobile fee, a lot of things which are positive. But I was just talking about Kerala specific and tourism, where we have a lot of people who are still not earning a single pie as revenue. So for all those people, the nil return filing can be done through SMS, and GSTR1 is the return of sales, services, and output credit, and GSTR3B is of inputs. So with that, you can file an SMS, which, technology, again, Vivek did mention about technology is today a driver, not an enabler. Without technology, we are not there. Annual return is something which, again, reconciliation statements, again, look at that. We are still in financial year 18-19. There are backlogs. That was originally in March, then extended to September. Now we still have time till 31st December 2020. Let me pause here for a minute. Now, the entrepreneurs who are here virtually in this program, the businessmen who are here, I think there is a lot of, awareness need to be built up, and a blind reliance on the consultant. It could be anybody for that matter, a qualified consultant, a tax practitioner, but I think awareness and making sure that these forms go on time. You have to make sure, insist on having something like a feedback from your consultants, failing which the provisions are very punitive. You can end up paying huge penalties, which is very, very painful. So that brings us to company law. We have, in Kerala, if you talk about Kerala scenario, I just had a chat with the assistant registrar. There are 60,000 plus companies registered in Kerala, of which hardly 37,000 are active. Others are there, they are not active, but they are not dead. So all the compliance requirements work on them unless they have been struck off by the registrar, suo moto. So now certain relaxations have come for companies. First one was saying that companies can hold board meetings on all matters. Why I've highlighted all is because that it has been the certain matters, right, approval of accounts could not be done online. That is enabled now. Look at the second point, which is very relevant. I think KMA will also do. I would just would like the MC to look at this very seriously. We have CSR conclave coming up. COVID-related activities are now eligible for CSR spending under 135 and Chapter 7 of the Companies Act. So that is something we should take note of. And it could be funding the developing the vaccine process to helping the COVID clients financially. All that is covered. Annual general meeting. KMA took a clue from this MCA circular, and we conducted our AGM online for the first time. That is historical. So companies can conduct AGMs. Going on, companies can conduct EGM also on virtual or other audiovisual means and transact items. I think I need to conclude quickly. So extension of time for holding AGM. This is very important. AGM should have been for the financial year 1920. Private limited, public limited, all companies should have held AGM by 30th of September. In the wake of this COVID, through a circular, individual state registrars, our registrar of companies Kerala has also issued an order. We have time to hold AGM till 31/12/2020 and still not face any penal proceedings. Now, this is a new scheme which was introduced a little before the COVID outbreak. But look at the last part of it. I would like to go faster here. Any company which has not been compliant in the past, right from incorporation, can come clean by all the additional fees, prosecution penalties are waived off. It is, and then it's available only till 39. The scheme is still on till 31/12/2020. Insolvency is something which is, in fact, ease of doing business ranking of our country has gone up mainly because of two things. One is the IBC, which is a resolution process, and of course GST. So the minimum default now, small cases cannot go to NCLT for the IBC process. The minimum amount has been raised from 1 lakh to a whopping 1 crore. Only after the smaller cannot go, because it's also to decongest the NCLT. And last one is that here, this gives a relief for many of the corporate debtors, as I call them. 25th March till 25th December 2020, if a corporate debtor, there is an initiation of the CIRP, as they call it, is resolution process under the IBC is be suspended. We come to the last but one slide. I think, this is again limited liability partnerships, a form of a constitution rather has not taken real big size, but there are certain attractions as compared to private limited companies. There also there was a modified little settlement scheme. Let's conclude same thing as the company fresh settlement scheme, fresh start scheme. MCA has extended the time limit for clearing all your backlogs and coming clean without paying a single pi as additional fee or penalties. Also starts extended to 31/12/2020. As the president said, I recently did a presentation for the Federation of Telangana Chambers of Commerce and Industry, where I showed them that a small LLP, which I just gave an example, which I am reiterating here, August 2016, has not done compliance so far for 3 years. The saving they would have under this scheme is about 2,18,000 plus 2,64,000 rupees. This is small LLP that would. Otherwise, if the scheme was not there, if you're not availing the scheme after till 31st December, you have to act fast, and then otherwise after that huge penal action would be taken against you, and that is something which is very, very important. So in the given time, Vivek and President, I have tried to cover on what has happened on the front of compliance on taxation, IBC, GST, and of course, 2 new schemes which they have been extended to a large extent for the benefit of members. So the corporates and defaulters as in amnesty schemes. So with that, let me conclude once again, thanking the organizers for the opportunity, and we'll take a few questions. Thank you so much. Back to you, Vivek. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Very, very structured manner. You have covered all the due dates and deadlines, and I'm sure that there could be a few queries which come in. So without any further ado, let's move on to our next speaker, Damodar Avanur is the face of MSME and SME business in Kerala. You name it in any forum, in any government body, any representative group, he is there. He's leading the group, and personally, I've seen how much of respect he demands and gets from the government, and I think that's we are very fortunate that you have joined us today, and I think it's the first time that you are addressing a KMA group. He is the managing director of the Chetana group, and also the Loha Shilpi group, and served as a past president of the Kerala Small Scale Industries Association of Kerala, and very active in various forums across the state. So over to you, Damodarji. We'd like to listen to you about what is it that large number of MSME members that we have in the room today.
Thank you, Vivek, for your kind words. I thank KMA for inviting me out here. Well, broadly speaking, there are around 3 to 4 categories of MSMEs in Kerala. One who are very professional, focused on growth, diversification, etc. And then there are those who have entered their comfort zone. They have made their pile and not too worried about the setbacks. They just laid back and easygoing. And then there are those small categories which are quite large in number who exist from hand to mouth, who are unable to think beyond, say, a week, and just in the same old rut. They're not getting out of it. Fortunately, there are a lot of new entrants into the sector who are much more studied and focused, very clear in their thoughts. And they do a lot of market research, market study, and then get into the business. And most of them are doing fairly well. Now coming to COVID, we have a lot of schemes announced by the government of India. I'm not very sure about how many of them have been implemented, how many of them are available for MSMEs. Probably it's my ignorance, or I have not gone around shopping for them. Getting loans from a bank continues to be a problem. I'll take my example. I was supposed to buy a very small car this week. Federal Bank said they'll sanction a loan today. This morning, I get a call from the branch saying that due to Corona, all the powers of the branch managers have been removed, and it's for the head office to sanction a loan, somewhere close to 5 lakhs or 6 lakhs, something. Just Corona has removed their powers. I don't know how far it's true. If it's true, it's not the way to go around. We have the first speaker saying about bank managers being engaged with their customers. I don't think it's being done anymore. It's all structured. You have verticals who decide on whether to sanction a loan or not. You have a lot of papers these verticals or these committees do not have a face. They not know who the customer is. And that is not good for MSMEs. One of the reasons is these MSMEs still continue to not reflect all their transaction in their books. This is something they have not got beyond of. Unless you have a good financial statement to present, these banks do not come forward. And this realization has not sunk into the MSMEs. Now, if it's a bank manager who's supposed to sanction a loan, or he's got some powers, he knows what he's going to enter into, probably because he knows this customer. If you walk into a factory, you can very well know whether it's healthy or not, just by looking at the activity, the inventory that they carry, and how it's being conducted. Just one step into a factory and you can make out of it. There's another disadvantage in getting loans for MSMEs. These MSMEs are not in a position, or a new entrant is not in a position to shop around trying to get the best deal from a lending institution. These lending, Vivek, you would remember the last meeting we had in Calicut. It's these so-called CGT MSME loans and all that. They do not come forth as you wish. Probably these banks have their own reasons, or they're being cautious. From the GST point of view, the government of Kerala is really tightening its screws. There are a lot of raids, inspections taking place on the way, which I would probably most of us would say that if all your papers are perfect, you don't have to worry. Sometimes it does not happen and then you're stuck. Sometimes I do admit that some of the people are not very honest either. But then this tightening by the GST department has its impact. And you won't believe it, there are a lot of MSMEs who have not filed a GST return because they don't have the money to pay it. They would have diverted the funds that the GST that they've collected. Now coming to those sectors which are doing well and which are not doing well, I can give you a broad idea. The food sector is they have a bounce back. They're doing fairly well. And I know some of the medium to large, small guys who, when they found that the Kerala market is not good enough, they have gone to the neighboring states and then they've showed a growth in this financial year. So the food sector is doing quite well. Those MSMEs who are catering to the construction industry have taken a hit. This includes the small general engineering people, cement-based units, wood-based unit, paint. All these guys have really taken a hit. And one of the problems that they face is they do not get money from the market for the supplies that they've made. And what happens is they continue to supply on the hope that they get their earlier payments, and the sundry creditors list or the amount keeps on growing. That is really pinching them, and this is making some of them fall sick also. Interestingly, there's another sector that is doing, it's in a very bad shape, the pharma industry. I'm in that industry. Unfortunately, no one is falling sick. Most of the people around are quite healthy. I wonder how much, now here's a question. How many of you will go to a hospital if you have a small ailment? I'm sure none of us will go there because we feel that that's an infected place. And the doctors too are reluctant to see patients as far as possible. Most of the hospitals have empty rooms or beds. The doctor's salary have been slashed. The staff are not being paid on time. The medical shops, their turnover has dropped to close to 40%. And the whole sector is not doing well. It is good for the society, but bad for the pharma and the healthcare sector. Right? Interestingly, the Ayurveda sector who make traditional products, they are doing extremely well. Those who are into patented products in the Ayurveda sector, not as good, but then the traditional medicines like Asam, Arishtams, and Lehyams, they're doing extremely well. Kottakkal Ayurveda Shala, which makes around 20,000 units of Chavanaprasham a month, are selling more than 1 lakh nowadays. Their sales have shot up. They're unable to cater to the market demand. That's the same with Vaidyaratnam, SNA, Coimbatore Ayurveda Pharmacy and all that who make their traditional products. Those who are into patented Ayurveda products are not doing as good as these traditional guys, but then they too are fairly okay. Surprisingly, there's one sector that's doing wonderfully well, the veterinary pharmaceutical industry. They are showing a growth. Even during the months of April, May, they have shown a growth. Now, I keep wondering how that happens, but then that sector is doing really well. And there are a lot of new entrants. I don't know how many of you know are into dairy farming, poultry, freshwater, fish rearing, piggeries, etc. A lot of guys who have come back from the Gulf or NRIs are investing money in that and this. And there are veterinary doctors who act as consultants for these animal husbandry units. Professionally done, very well done. And they're doing quite well also. So that's one sector that's doing quite well. And that's a general position as such about the MSME units. Ultimately, there should be some mentoring or something taking place for these guys who are not complying with the rules and regulations of the country and who do not think beyond to come forward, put all their transactions in order, disclose as much as possible, get financial help, enable the bank lending institutions to lend whatever money that they're eligible to get. That's how it should go forward. Unfortunately, it's not happening. But as I said before, the new entrants who are coming in are doing exactly that. They are disclosing all their transactions right from the day one and doing fairly well. That's about how the small scale industry or MSMEs are at the moment in Kerala. That's about it, Vivek, at the moment. And I'll join as and when things progress. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving a very broad perspective from a macro angle, specifically talking about a few sectors. And I think you've in 10 minutes given us a good overview of some of the issues which are faced. I'm sure we will have further discussion on this topic. And post speaker is somebody who's the face of KMA when it comes to the technology world. Our past president Dinesh Thambi, a very popular face to all of us. He heads TCS, been with TCS for almost 3 decades now, and he has almost 15,000 people in Kerala who report to him, and he's completely transitioned into a different world over the last 8-9 months. So he will speak to us in the next 10 minutes on some of the issues, for some of the areas which we also need to be careful about from an IT angle regarding security, safety, etc., and also some of the challenges which he has faced, and from a digital transformation angle also. So over to you, Dinesh.
Yeah, thank you, Vivek. Thanks, President Madhav and KMA for giving me this opportunity. And good evening to all. We all know, I think in the last maybe 100 years, once the Spanish flu came and went, this is something like which the whole world has come to a standstill. So from that standpoint, anyway, as I mentioned, I think Madhav earlier alluded to that, what I normally call as like a BC, DC, and an AC scenario, which is a before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. So I will just touch upon maybe BC. We all know it was good times. Nobody expected something like that. This will come up, and that will like in such a manner, the whole world is like reeling on it. But I will just touch upon where the DC time, what is the impact, what is happening now, and where it will go once it's over, the after COVID timeframe from an IT standpoint, touching upon like some of the industry verticals. So mainly from an IT standpoint, if you look at it, as earlier speakers mentioned, the fall in the economy, because of which various industry verticals got affected. That is the main reason where I think the impact came into IT, especially like TTH, travel, tourism, and hospitality. Jomon mentioned it is picking up, but that was one industry like it has been completely hit. Manufacturing is another one, retail is the third one. So there are many industries, and that impact we also have seen within our organization, or in fact, like not only within TCS, maybe within the IT sector, where like many of the contracts and even like organizations which are small and medium having like specific vertical expertise. Suppose you are doing work only for a transportation or a travel and hospitality, then you are like really getting hit. The contracts are getting cancelled. And obviously, like being a large organization, we will be able to like be moved people across other sectors, because in the same, on the other side of the impact, there is also a lot of work coming in. That is one good aspect from an IT standpoint, which I will come to in a minute. So that was where like the major impact happened. The fall of the economy, the verticals, the industry verticals had an impact, which made us to completely shift to a mode of operation, where earlier it was a campus, we have like X number of buildings or facilities, everybody come, we sit together, work together, have meetings, tea, coffee, whatever, into a completely distributed environment. Basically, the remote working is what is happening. And within and all of the industries, in fact, in Kerala also, I know, because being part of GTech in Technopark, Infopark, Cyber Park, or even outside, more or less everybody are transformed completely into the work from home model, and it's working very well. In fact, there are also like and we also get like feedback from our customers, and it's a general say that the work is happening quite well. In fact, many of the initially it took some time, but in between it became a little bit of like a scenario as to when we will come to office. People started asking that, but again, with the crisis of this pandemic, people understood, especially from a safety and the health standpoint, we completely transformed work from home, and it is happening quite well. In fact, not only the work, like from a productivity standpoint, we know like in many of the cases it's improving, but also from a what do you call art and culture and aspects, like whatever the in fact, we did like in TCS a complete Onam, many relationship, many accounts did among the teams an Onam festival completely virtually. In fact, there was dance, mono act, mimicry, whatever it is. So it was all is happening. So that is getting settled. Now, when it will get over, in fact, like we had like an operations review and the discussions with the business group, many of the customers is now taking a stand. The customers themselves will reopen only in June. So some of them are in March, but there is a chance of extending that. So that is the way the work from home. So that is remote working is one thing which got completely transformed. And if I just elaborate a bit of that from a physical building standpoint, it became a technology platform. So everything is connected through the net, and whether it's everything is happening, the work is happening, competency development is happening. As I mentioned, the cultural programs are happening, such talks are happening, innovation is happening, everything is through a virtual platform is happening. The third aspect is the digital adoption. It has taken a quantum leap, whether from an organization standpoint or from an industry standpoint. Everybody is looking for a digital adoption. Whatever may be the plan they were having initially, like it may, like many of the customers were, or industry verticals were going in that manner. But still, they were thinking there is time. I will do it in like 6 months. This was not sort of a priority. It will happen. So it will happen at whatever point of time, but that is all getting accelerated. That's why I earlier mentioned there is also a good amount of work which is coming in. And earlier, the first speaker mentioned about the skilling, cross skilling, and reskilling is becoming like a part of part and parcel of the IT industry, where everybody, because it's all into a newer technology, whether we call it as cloud, artificial intelligence, data analytics, is all. So there is a huge effort being put in from a training standpoint also. Fortunately, we as an organization had been doing digitization, and pretty much like close to 90-95% of the training happens even now or earlier itself from a training virtual mode. So that definitely helped. And what triggered this digital adoption is the consumer behavior, because the consumers moved drastically into online channels. Like earlier it was mentioned, the industries are getting impacted, but whomever moved into even the food. I think if you look at it, Zomato, Swiggy and all, you can see every certain interval, if you look, one or the other guy will be passing through a point. So that is, and they also change the models. It's not only food. They deliver whatever you want at your doorstep. Like if you want something from Lulu hypermarket, you can select things, Zomato or whomever, depending on who they are tied up with, will deliver. So the consumer behavior change, that is one of the things. And the companies and industries are also responded very well to that. So that is the fourth point. Now, all these things, the challenge what is can happen is, like even in any of the, say, banking industry, elderly people are at home. Say earlier, when they get an SMS, if they don't understand, they walk to the nearest bank and check with somebody what is happening. So that is where I think the point which Vivek mentioned, the security comes into play. So they don't know what is this, and obviously, and being taking all the health precautions, they don't want to go out. They click something. That's where the data pilferage happens, or like people will pick up. The vulnerabilities are happening from that standpoint. So any industry, small, medium, or large, when they are coming up with applications, if in the future, definitely now and in the future, has to do a penetration test. The applications has to be robust, and data encryption. A lot of those technologies and techniques has to be put in place. Now, the next point, from a focus from an IT standpoint, if you look at it, is going to touch every industry vertical. Couple of them, like education, as we all know, online education is going to stay, and it has boomed so heavily. Byju's and many of the others are a very good example. The other one is retail. Retail is adopting much faster. We all know, like Amazon, everybody, rather than nowadays seeing an ad about Jayalashmi or somebody like that, we are seeing an ad from an Amazon bazaar where you can go in and buy everything you want. So it's completely in that transformation mode. And entertainment, Netflix, Amazon Prime, everybody has adopted. In fact, just to give us statistics, Netflix added 26 million views, new subscribers in the first half of 2020. Which made them a number. The global total is 193 million subscribers. So sharp increase in the viewership. So that all these areas, the technology plays a major role. Even in the TTH, it's not like the hotels or the tourism, hospitality industries are sitting quiet. They are doing a lot of work, because if you walk into one of the resorts or hotels, the main thing which they have to now show to their customers is that they are safe. The content management, how the earlier the way in which the content was put, now they have to show small videos, things like that, where like, okay, so much of cleaning is happening, so much of this thing, we are safe, keyless, touch-free entries. So a lot of safety aspects is what is coming into play. So this is all is happening like what I call as the DC, the during COVID era. Now, if you look at an AC after COVID standpoint, like we know 2008 financial crisis happened, but it impacted one industry, a lot of things changed, and we moved on. And some of the changes stayed, some of the things were modified. But from the after COVID standpoint, whatever shifts which is happening now, it's going to stay, especially like work from home. In fact, TCS had announced a 25 by 25 model. By 2025, every associate will spend only 25% of their time in the office. The rest will be working from home. In fact, customers are also adapting in that model. In fact, some of the insurance firms in US, they have closed 4-5 offices or left the lease and moved their employees completely to home and working from home. So that is going to stay. That is one change which is coming up. The customer needs, as I mentioned, the expectations online, everybody is going. In fact, earlier, like 1 or 2 apps was there in every mobile, may have like 5 to 8 apps, anything or everything they compare and they can order through the online mode. And also the increasing use of the advanced technologies. That is where like the small, medium companies, if you look at the small and medium companies, front ending, the digital front end is getting adapted very fast. But there are like, because of the earlier packages being used or the manual work being done, the back end is what they have to really look for to get themselves adopted or changed. That is one of the areas which is coming up. And the data security, ensure that, in fact, like I used to do my security review, the actual incidents which is happening now is quite less, because when in office, what will happen, people will forward some document to their personal ID, which is like restricted. In fact, certain customers create a lot of, in fact, people were even asked to leave because of their strict guidelines. That is one area, but actually in the home, that is not happening. But the other area which is coming into play, if it's a BPO agent working, like once, like long back, I think 10-20 years back, it happened in Dell in Bangalore. Somebody by hearted the card number, the credit card number, and it can be used anywhere. In fact, Citibank also had a famous issue which they took almost 6 months to figure out, that one of the agents working from home is what, like, because one of the family members saw by hearted, and it was like the card was used for like so much of a transaction. So all those security aspects, that is going to improve. A lot of technologies, tools will coming into play, and cyber security and all these like latest technologies will be definitely, if the younger generation want to get into that field, and that will be a really good source where like the training and learning has to happen. And these are like some of the changes which is happening, is definitely going to stay even the after COVID time frame. So that's all just from an overall. In fact, the other aspect is like we ourselves sitting in the Zoom platform. In fact, we should be proud, like from Chertala, vConsole, that is another like it is a nationally selected platform which is coming into play. I have used that. It is like quite good. It may be some of the things has to improve, but it has coming in quite well. That itself is like a change. It's like it displays what technology is going to impact in our daily life. So that's all from my side, Vivek. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dinesh. And as you could see, we would have loved to give more time to all our speakers, but we have 4 very eminent speakers here. Dinesh was virtually breathless for the last 10-12 minutes. Almost sounded like a rap song, the way he was going about it. And I think so much of content that all of us have learned over the last 45-50 minutes during the course of our discussion. So I would request all of you who are in the room to kindly send in your questions via chat. Meanwhile, over the next 20 odd minutes, let me have the opportunity to engage with our speakers while the questions come in. So what I would like to first talk about is the 3-4 aspects are very important for any SME, MSME business in these times, or for any of us as managers or as professionals. The one point which we always talk about is that cash is king. It's something that we always talk about when it comes to the COVID times. Second thing we talk about is that fund diversion has to be really curtailed, if not stopped. We have this Malayali way of rolling money, etc. These are highly dangerous, especially in a time like this when problem with rolling is that when there is a stop to the rolling, then the entire thing comes to a standstill. So this is a very dangerous time for that. And how we must look at controlling expenditure, how we must look at having a proper budgeting system for our own businesses as well as for our personal finances, etc. These are some of the important aspects. So first, let me start with our banker friend and ask him what advice would you have for all of us here regarding how is it that we should look at conserving cash, and how should we look at controlling expenditure, and looking at ensuring that we have how we build up our safety net. This would be my question to you.
Okay, so I wouldn't know as to industry wise how would you want to protect as to where you spend. I can probably second the thought that you started the question with, that cash flow based lending will be the norm going forward. So it is very critical that all of us listen to the same advice that you just gave, because today what is happening is, right from your PAN card linkage to Aadhaar linkage to bank account linkage to GST linkage, and everything else is on the digital platform. It is visible. It will become more and more visible to the bank as to what your capacity is in terms of the business and the cash flows and stuff like that. It will make the job of a banker easier. So today it is an asset-based financing model that many banks follow. So there is a security available, and basis that security, there is a certain share of margin that the promoter brings in, and the rest is given by the bank. It will, on the working capital side, it will become more and more of cash-based, cash flow-based lending things. Now, I'll give you one simple example. So in my erstwhile bank where I was last working, we used to give a very unsecured loan called personal loan. It's the most unsecured loan, because you give it to a person and there's no security taken at all. And the bank was in a position to give an unsecured personal loan to a person who's banking with us, purely basis an account-based transaction, and the bank used to pre-approve the loan. The customer can log in anytime and then take the money without even giving them a single signed agreement. So it is on the net banking at 2 o'clock in the night. You need the money. If it is a pre-approved loan for you, you just log in, take the loan immediately. They used to call it as PL in 10 seconds. So that's where things have to be from any SME perspective, that you will have to start moving more and more of your banking in more and more of your transactions through a bank structure. That is the only way that you can enhance your ability to take better loans and more loans. So the bigger the transaction happens to the bank account, the bank feels more comfortable, and they see all these transactions happening. They get more comfortable about lending it to you. So maybe that's the best way to take it forward.
Thank you so much, Sri Kumar. Now, let me pose a question to Mr. Damodar. Fund diversion, I think typically as an entrepreneur yourself, and knowing the kind of situation we are in, what would be your take on fund diversion, and why is it so important that we must not engage or indulge in any kind of fund diversion in difficult times?
Vivek, before the pandemic, most of the MSMEs were committing this crime, diverting your working capital for capital expenditure. For unproductive expenditure, you divert your working capital and you run into trouble. This is one of the crimes that we used to commit before Corona or COVID. Right now, there's no money to divert with most of them. So the question does not arise whether you're going to divert or not. But most of the MSMEs have learned to cut down their expenses as far as possible. I noticed that without the society getting to know, that's another smart thing that these guys do. So that if the society gets to know that you have cut down your expenses and all that, probably that may not look good for them and their family. Then they are managing to do that, cut down your expenses, cutting down wastage. That's another important lesson that most of the MSMEs have learned. following this following COVID. Cut down wasteful expenditure. That's the positive side of Corona, and that's how it is. And there was a trend of just going for loans sake, and then not putting it for productive purposes. That also is to affect these MSMEs without financial planning. Earlier, I was telling you, Vivek, people like you should be advisors also to MSMEs on how to manage your funds, what you should do, what you should not do. You people should be on call. I know that, Vivek, you telling me that you have a lot of small clients whom you help in this manner. I wish more chartered accountants come forward and do this for the MSMEs. I hope I have answered your question, Vivek.
Yeah, very well, very well. You captured this thought very well. Thank you. So I think I'll take it forward from where Damodarji stopped with a question to our chartered accountant friend, Jomonji. Now, the point here is that, yes, certainly this is the time which is again important that KMA as an ecosystem, we have a wealth of leaders from virtually all spheres, and we are also looking at how we can engage with our member base, because these are troubled times. We want to see in what manner we can help, whether we should set up some mini clinics, literally clinics in apostrophe, obviously, to see how we can help our members, how we can help the MSMEs, how we can help the entrepreneurial community. So what would be your take on how, you're also having the role as the honorary secretary of KMA. I'm sure while concluding, we can hear what the president also has to say on this. But in what manner can, all of us from, varied spheres, be it finance or be it trainers, be it mentors or program committees, SR is a mentor. So we have people from all, various experts here. How do we engage as one? And along with that, I would also request you to take one more question. We have a question from Eldos Isaac, who asked, by when do you expect the Indian GDP? It's also asked banking. Let me make it a little more broader. Let's bring the whole economy into it. When do you expect it to get back to pre-COVID levels? Let me add, do you ever expect it to get to pre-COVID levels? So let's hear from you. Yeah.
Yes. From the first question is the role of KMA or any well-meaning management association or confederation of industry stands substantially more relevant now in the wake of the situation where the members, whether it's corporates or individuals, professionals, self-employed people are reeling under different kinds of pressures. So that way, I think I would like to congratulate the president and you for having made a wonderful beginning, because the first thing is to come together and to share views to know where we stand and how is that KMA can probably position and conduct itself in supporting our members, not only even beyond. We can also engage with the other local management associations to start with in Kerala. So the panel of experts which we have in-house, and of course what we can collaborate, surely we should bring them in connection with the MSMEs and the member organizations. And we could have the right technology. I think Dinesh would be the right person. We'll have a technology window whereby they will have the queries raised, or they'll have specific issues raised. It could be relating to banking or conduct of the business, issues relating to accounts or financial discipline. And Mr. Damodar was talking about the borrowing and misuse of funds. We used to see that, and every crisis that way is lessons where we come to a halt and say that going is not as good as it used to be before. So I think this is ideally what we should do. The term which you use, clinic, is the right thing. We should have a window whereby we can have this experts coming on one side and the queries and interaction also, probably going forward, some kind of a physical interaction, limited numbers we should do. I think we should gear up for that. If I recall, we had that threadbare discussion in the last MC meeting also. The president is also very much positive on that. That is my take there. And surely be very, very actively taking part in that. I'll put all my weight behind the efforts on that. The question the second question is about the GDP bouncing back. See, now there are green signals. Of course, there are this dip is IMF itself in the latest report is saying that by 21-22, the next financial year, normalcy would be regained and the GDP would go to a growth rate of 8.8%. which is slightly higher than what is predicted of them. Banking, I don't know whether I have the permission of Mr. Srikumar to talk about banking, but the rough estimate shows about he was also very vocal on bad loans, NBS, weakening the banking system. And today, if we look at from that angle, roughly 20% of our economy is stressed because of the bad loans. Banking is an integral part of the economy and the system, not only here, world over. So the expected bad loans in the system in the next 1.5 years is going to be about $2.1 trillion, of which about 1.3 would happen this year and 0.8 would happen. $1 trillion, I'm just recalling the figures. So when banking would bounce back to normalcy, because the governmental schemes are putting a lot of pressure on the banks, this has to be funded. Because today I got a message from my banker saying that under this thing, an amount has been credited to my bank account from the interest differential. So technology is taking care to that extent. It's been done and I've immediately been notified. It's a small amount probably on my car loan, but then the ex gratia, the latest scheme which I have announced. So banking sector, I think, would probably be limping for some more time until we are really out of the problems and businesses get into volumes and healthy business for the bankers.
Right. Thank you. So next, first, I think that we covered the point in a very lucid manner, and let us hope that that the same optimism which has been shared by Jomonji will take our economy back on its feet. Now, a question for our IT friend Dinesh. Let me just combine a couple of questions here, though the question may not exactly be addressed to you, but I think you may have appropriate answers for this. One question from our senior member VR Nair is that bankers should take up urgently reskilling of senior citizen customers. Most of them concerned worry about adapting to online model and risk. So probably since it is an online security issue, I think I'll put that across to you. And let me also combine that with a question from a very respected person from the job recruitment scene, Mr. N.M. Sharafuddin, who has added a line on as per the recent survey published by WTO, tourism will come to normalcy only by 2024. Since you are somebody who, Dinesh, who travels so frequently all over the world, probably you can also add your 2 bits on it. And thereafter, I think we will have to wind up. There is also a very interesting question from our committee member, A. Balakrishnan. So hopefully, if we have time, we will take that question also to Mr. Srikumar. Dinesh, over to you for this.
Yeah, thanks, Vivek. The first question to answer, I think it's mainly the awareness needs to be created. I think that is what comes into play. There are, I know, like from the banking sector also, we get messages as to not to use this, whether the OTP number should not be shared. A lot of aspects comes into play. But from an online standpoint, it's like, one is like the nature, the way in which banking was done, or like people want to go to the bank. It's not mainly from a banking, like, talk to the people, know them, have a tea, all those things used to happen, which is now changing. And it is like to get used to that. And we know there were also like senior citizens who were like having very much challenges. And in fact, to an extent, they protested like something needs to be done to them. But from an overall, rather than like a training aspect of it, but I think the awareness should be created, and how that online to the adaptation has to come into play. And again, it also has to have the gadgets which is user friendly, and how they will be able to easily adapt to that. Rather than like maybe a cumbersome process, obviously they will lose interest and then drop the ball. So that is the first part of it. Tourism, yes. In fact, like there were also recent articles, everything which came in, because it is one thing, even if it is picks up, will what do you call the people want to travel, because that is one thing they are like looking for. It may say because it's affecting the health, and with the recent what do you call the articles, if you look at it, if COVID is if somebody goes through a COVID and got affected, after that also the recovery time is now becoming a issue. In fact, yesterday that a very young person, like 43 years old, passed away because of heart attack, and he was impacted by COVID. So that puts more pressure on that particular industry, whether people want to go, even if whatever we say. In fact, like in US also, they are the first one who objected, right from president said they won't wear mask and everything. But finally, like at some point of time, they have to get used to it. They have to like use that. In fact, they even put up a video from a person in the ICU and things like that to advocate that particular aspect. So from tourism definitely is going to take time. And in fact, there are recent articles also which specifically mentions the way in which it will bounce back. It will take time. But as I earlier mentioned, it's not like they are all sitting tight. Lot of what you call technology interventions are happening. There are a lot of system changes, application changes. Many of this, whole of the travel, transportation, hospitality industry is working on it. So definitely, and once it bounce back, in fact, I know like our own TTH heads say, it's bounce back, it will pick up quite fast. So that is where like that optimism they are all having. That's what is currently happening.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
If I may add on, I think there's a different view.
Yeah.
WTO statistics could be on global travel and tourism, but what can happen is cross-country travel will not immediately happen. I think so within the country and within the states. Kerala, for example, as Dinesh rightly said, people are really desperate to have a break, but then the safety concerns are there. I have an interaction, of course, I have this thing where Airbnb is involved. Airbnb has set up new protocols on safety to make sure that there is a clear sterilization after every checkout and things like that. So getting to hear that many of the resorts in Munnar are getting about 25 to 30% occupancy during weekdays, and it's almost 50-60% during weekends. There's a desperate thing to travel, but if the safety concerns are addressed within the state itself, because now we have this huge IT population who are working at home. So they don't have any interaction. They're not there. They're stuck at home. So probably as family, as stacks, they would really like to travel. So global scenario may take a longer time, but domestic tourism, I think on a smaller scale, would pick up faster than what the global thing would be. That is my take on that.
Thank you. Thank you for supplementing that view. Now, two final questions before we wind up the session. Both are to our panelists from the banking sector, Srikumar Nair. Let me just quickly, I'll just summarize both these questions and try to connect the two. One is from a student, Cyril Tom, who is worried about the education loan position and what would be your advice to students on, in case their loans are, getting either blocked or discontinued or the whole scheme of sanctioning loans to students is, if you're going to make it stricter, what would happen, because you're passing on the NPA hammering on one side by reducing the outlay on student loans. A similar question, but in a probably a larger scale, is what our friend from our managing committee, ABK, has asked. Do you think banks are supposed to change its present way of assessment of repayment capacity, because the existing pattern of demand need not be the indicator of future demand? So very, very relevant situation, and I think we would request probably in another 3-4 minutes if you can give us a quick reply. We need to wind up by 7:10. Over to you.
So I will try and answer it slightly differently. So somewhere there is a thinking process that banks is only for borrowers. I think it has to be really appreciated that bank is also for the depositors, just as much as it is for the borrowers. Bank is an intermediary. It doesn't use its own money. It takes money from A and gives it to B. So it is important and very critical for all of us to ensure that the B gives the money back. So it is not just in the bank's interest that B gives the money back. It is in A's interest also that B gives the money back to the bank. So this philosophy of looking at banks only from a lending institution perspective is not correct. Which is why I brought upon the issue of NPA, and which is a larger economy-wide problem, which is something which all of us are responsible for us in some way or the other. That we have to put our might together to ensure that we are not amongst those defaulters, and we are not creating the issue for a system which is harming the entire economy as well as the depositors. So when today's Supreme Court came out and said that, okay, refund the interest on interest, I don't know whether that's a great move, because ultimately you're messing with the credit discipline in the system. And it is not that every person who requires money has actually borrowed from a bank. What if he has taken a loan from a money lender? He doesn't get the benefit, right? So I will leave it at that, because education loan per se is not about one particular education loan. People still give education loans. There are very focused institutions. Let's say in an HDFC group, we had a company called Credila Finance, which is only doing education finance. So there are companies which are very fully focused on that and do that product well. But expecting every bank to do everything well, it's not a politically right answer, but that's the reality. that to expect that every bank will give every kind of loan just because some government wants them to give, that is leading to further problems on the so-called NPE. The first question, the second question that you asked, that the credit norms need to be reassessed, I completely agree. So I mentioned something about cash flow. Forgot to mention something more about the credit discipline that each one of us should follow, because there is a credit rating. So everybody's credit rating is available for every other bank. When you apply for a car loan or a home loan or personal loan, the bank knows how good you are in your previous repayment. So it is not like before. So that is one more thing. Secondly, like I said, this reskilling part is important for MSME. When just like the companies have to reimagine themselves, the banks will also have to reimagine, and that's a problem which all of us have to live through. So I said there is a reskilling required at every level. So entrepreneur needs to reskill, the banker needs to reskill, and it's a constant process. It is never going to end. So each of us will have to keep learning from each other and then keep improving.
Thank you very much, Srikumar. Some of your views, I'm sure, would have evoked very strong responses and reactions had we been having this debate in real time. You would have been surrounded with a very contrarian view, I'm sure, and I think that's what makes these discussions very interesting. And I think
prefer to stay away in Bangalore.
So anyway, I think it's been very nice, the very candid views shared by all our four panelists who have, threadbare gone through, and they're all experts in their own fields, have their own perspective, and hearing very diverse, perspectives is finally what a good panel discussion is all about. And I'm sure that all our panelists have done justice to the job. So let me, with these words, hand it over back to the President. Thank you once again, President, for giving all of us an opportunity to be here together.
Thank you, Vivek, and all the four esteemed panelists for giving a lot of guidelines as well as advices to each one of us, and for the industry per se. The kind of a forecast which you gave, which none of us are anyway able to actually do any predictions right now. Even now, as Dinesh rightly said, we are in the DC only. I mean, only after once we touch AC, we can even think about something like that. So we don't know where we are going to head our industry or business or profession in this direction. But well, I think one thing, as Jovan rightly said, we are on the right track, because this year we started a new committee called the 3R committee, headed by our past president S.R. Nair, and of course Mr. George Alexander Muthoot of the Muthoot Group, which is 3R is something like revive, rehabilitate, and reboot. So that kind of a situation which we need to actually guide. That's where we talked about the clinic, the KMA can offer, and the consultancy which we can offer, not only from the chartered accountant side, but we have a gold mine or a treasure trove of experts with years of experience in many fields, successes, failures, everything we have seen. So that which we bring on the table, and that is what the clinic can actually offer to all those, not only MSMEs, but any industry or business where some kind of help is needed from the seniors, from the leaders, from the experienced speakers who can actually, share their thoughts and views and guidances which can be given. That is there. Anyway, thank you so much, all four of you, especially Srikumar Nair from Bangalore. He joined us from Bangalore and giving that, whatever insight which he could actually give in this limited time. I'm sure each one of you could take at least an hour, if you are given this topic to talk about, but then you are trying to do a kind of a quick run on each one of the questions as well as the topics. Thank you, Mr. Damodar, for that brief but very insightful talk on what MSMEs are going through and what they need right now. And of course, our own Jomon and Dinesh, thank you so much for sharing all that you could in that limited time, and we will definitely have more time to discuss online as well as offline in the coming days. But let me just, before I hand it over to our to our Vice President, Mr. A. Balakrishnan, for the formal vote of thanks. Let me tell you that we are actually, we have been planning this formal inaugural session of this year's activities for the past 3 weeks. It can come anytime now. In a notice period of 4 or 5 days time, we'll be announcing that, because we are looking at somebody who is really big to come and do that inauguration. And we have some very interesting, agenda items also in that inaugural meeting. So please keep watching the KMA column for getting that news. But in the meantime, let me just give you a bit of what we have stored with our program committee chair headed by past President Resar Nair. There is a long list of activities already lined up, which is just getting stuck because of this inaugural event not happening. In fact, we have a series of speakers who have already confirmed their sessions. Just for your information, let me just tell you some of their names. We have Mr. Naresh Pinassetti, the president of Deepak Fertilizers and Petrochemicals Pune, who is going to talk to us on HR. We have got Mr. Shivaram Prasad, President Strategy of KCP Limited Chennai, who is going to delve on strategic management. We have a professor from IIT Roorkee, who is going to talk about servant leadership. And of course, one panel discussion also on startup environment, which we are going to talk about, where we have got Miss Fauzi of QTPI Alapi and Mr. Sujit Katatara of Jigs Board, a remote work venture, going to talk to us. So all these events are being lined up. So please wait. We will be having a long line of activities happening in KMA, irrespective of the COVID times. Thank you so much, each one of you. And I've seen so many of our past presidents, including IPP, Jibu, Paul, past President Rajmohan Nair, as I've said, SR Nair, Premchand, and all of you and other managing committee members also joining along with our members today. Thank you so much. Continue the support and continue being there in all these online sessions, because that is how we get the energy to actually conduct these kind of events again and again, irrespective of the problems and the traumas which are related to COVID, which we are going through personally, professionally, and business-wise. Let us at least have some kind of guidances, some kind of enlightenment happening in these sessions. Over to Mr. A. Balakrishnan, Vice President of KMA, for the vote of thanks.
So, respected President, distinguished guests and management committee members, past president and guests. At the outset, we have actually, there is a time overrun, so my thanks giving will be very short. At the outset, we are extremely grateful for attending this seminar and sharing the thoughts and ideas to our distinguished guest. First one is Mr. Sri Kumar Nair. Sri Kumar Nair is founder, CEO of Big C, and also former senior vice president of HDFC, and joining from Bangalore, and shared his valuable thoughts on the banking and upskilling. It is extremely useful. I am sure that it is useful for all the students attended. Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your thoughts and spending time with us. Mr. Damodar Ravanur, Director, Chedana Formulations. And actually, there are conflicting views on banking, but it is extremely good for simulating our thoughts. So thank you for your valuable inputs, and also sharing your greater ideas, and also consider the MSME upskilling in this particular context. So thank you very much, sir, for your time and attending and giving this inputs in this workshop, the panel discussion. Next is actually Jomon K. George. Jomon K. George is also our Honorable Secretary. And let me also tell you that he portrayed the entire scope of the government the initiation and also about GDP wonderfully well, and without much of a jargon. Even students can understand what we were talking about. Normally a chartered accountant speaks, they use a lot of jargons which a layman like me may not understand, but it was crystal clear. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Dinesh Thambi, I think we may have to give him an exclusive session on this topic. It is something to be further elaborated. Let me also tell you that the security incidents are increasing, especially in financial sector. There was a survey, there was a report from Deloitte or KPMG, I don't remember, in which Kerala is actually in the top list, especially Jomon's district. Kottayam is also in the district-wise, it is in the top list on security incidents.
I thought you were also from Kottayam district.
Yeah. So, so thanks to Mr. Dinesh Thambi for your very crisp session. And the whole thing managed well and concluded by our moderator. And he can talk on any subject, on any industry, Mr. Vivek Govind. And he is also our past president, very knowledgeable person. Thank you, sir, for your well-controlled session. Thank you very much. And thanks for each participant, students, especially for a student. Actually, it is a wonderful session. And if you consolidate all the points, then it is a wonderful management session for you. And thanks for attending the full time for this. And thanks to all past presidents and all other dignitaries attending this panel discussion. Thank you, sir. And over to President.
Thank you, Vice President Balakrishnan, for that crisp vote of thanks. But let me tell you, the panelists, it is not ending just with the vote of thanks orally. We have a specially curated memento being dispatched to your offices. You can have a look at that now. It's already ready. I mean, we have a very digital format of memento, which is right now prepared and curated. This will be coming to your offices very soon. This is a trademark KMA memento, which was designed some time back. So this will reach you. This is a current session which was held, and the speakers are all there live. So thank you so much once again, and thank you all the members, all the invited guest delegates for that wonderful participation in the feedback form which you submitted. We got more than 40 odd forms in such a short time. That's really good. Definitely, it will help us in improvising further, improving further in conducting these kind of sessions. So whatever feedback you've written, I've not gone through the feedback. We'll definitely go through each one of them. Even some of the questions, if you want to post, you could have done that there. We will continue doing that in the coming sessions also. Thank you so much, each one of you, once again. Yes, Jomar?
President, before we conclude, just a request. Probably we could condense this PPT which I made. Vivek also could probably have a more detailed look at it in KMA format, not because it's been done by me. We could probably share with the members. It's only a suggestion and request. And Vivek, we are closing well before the cricket time. And today, President should be happy, man, because ahead of Virat Kohli, he has hit a century in 10 minutes in the first of his meeting. So let's continue working together to make things happen. Sorry for that interruption, and this PPT would be shared with the permission of the moderator and the president.
I think Secretary couldn't resist coming in and concluding it, because it is his right to actually do the vote of thanks, which was pulled out from him and given to Vice President. So he had to stop me and talk and wind up the whole thing. Thank you so much. That's a good thought which you said about publishing that PPT condensed to all our members. It can be made into a kind. We talked about the YouTube channel and the WhatsApp channel also, where we can actually publish all these days, which are very important for all the members. So thank you so much once again, and let us continue this. And this attendance of more than 140 at one point of time, not because of us, because of the panelists who were there. I mean, in fact, this particular program was announced only just about 3 days back, and we had that kind of a participation from so many people and so many business houses coming in and participating. Really good. Thank you so much once again. And I don't say travel safe or anything. Most of you are at home or at your office. So anyway, take care of yourself and stay safe and be healthy. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you.
Good. You can unmute, Prajit. All of them. You can unmute.
Great program. Kudos to President and all the Vice President and past presidents. Vivek, you did a fantastic job.
When you have a panel like this, then the moderator has very little to do.
The panelists were all actually excused so that they don't take much time. That is the only problem, because with 4 evident speakers and 1 hour time or 1.5 hour time is being unfair. Anyway, it's okay. But then at least some takeaways they could get, I believe, of the going by the feedback in the chat box itself shows that it was really good. Thank you so much.
Your presentation was very good, and please share that. It's a good presentation.
IPP, how are things?
Yeah, Madhav, very good. Good start.
How do you feel getting out of the chair?
Pardon?
How do you feel getting out of the chair? IPP?
Very much relaxed.
Good.
It was a wonderful session. In fact, all panelists were at their best. Very good session, Madhav. Good start.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
You have not, started with the inaugural function. This was a good start. Very good.
The program committee chair is throbbing with the activities. A long list he has sent me. I only read out a bit of it. It's all ready, all set and lined up. We got to just remove that inaugural session from there, and you will cruise. So that is how it is. Things are all lined up well.
Excellent, excellent. Very good.
I can see.
അപ്പൊ ഒരു ചായ കുടിച്ചിട്ട് കളി കാണാൻ കയറാം അല്ലേ?
Bye bye.
Girija there. I'm just asking, there is a Girija name there. Is it Srikumar or Girija there? Anyway, nobody's there. Because I made a mention because the MC members have to be present. Like what past president was saying, there were only 12 of the MC members who are present in this meeting, and we have to make it a point to tell our managing committee members, like our managing committee meeting, they need to request for leave if they are not coming in for this, because it's very important for their presence to be here so that they can actually tell us something about how it was or anything to be corrected, changed in the managing committee meeting. When we get together, we can actually discuss it. So they need to be here. Yeah.
Their feedback is very important for us.
Why this senior vice president is not is on video off always?
You don't ask such questions to ladies. They must be
Anthony sir is there.
ISO is going on. Well,
ISO has been reactivated. Anthony sir.
Anthony sir was one of the first to actually join. I don't know whether he's still there. He had joined the meeting at around 5 o'clock actually. So we had a little bit of chat about ISO also. Then he said he is going off and then he'll come back later. I think he's not there now.
ED is not there. Patmara ED
ED leave ED leave Monday where ED ke medical advice കൊടുത്തിരിക്കുകയാണ്. Some friends told him his age is on the wrong side.
ED ക്ക് മെഡിക്കൽ ലീവ് ആണ് സമ്മതിച്ചു, പക്ഷേ അത് കണ്ണിന് വല്ല കുഴപ്പമുണ്ടോ ഇതിൽ വരെ?
വേറെ ആരും ഇല്ലല്ലോ അല്ലേ കമ്മിറ്റിയിലാണ്.
It's okay, yeah, it's okay. See, we have to respect people's safety concerns also. Somebody told him because age is on the wrong side, and when there was a COVID threat, you need to take care. It's okay.
Home quarantine.
Quarantine.
Lavali is there.
Hi, in the chat box. Lava, come out of your hiding.
Just he said hi now.
The car.
നിങ്ങളത് കാണട്ടെ.
അല്ലല്ല ഞാൻ let me just get.
നിങ്ങളൊന്ന് ഇടയ്ക്ക് ഒന്ന് വന്നിട്ട് പോകുന്ന കണ്ടു, ഞാൻ ശ്രദ്ധിച്ചു.
I was outside somewhere. ഞാൻ കാറിൽ വെച്ച് കേട്ട് പിന്നെ anyway I heard the speech. Just to let you Madhavan's message, I had to respect your message. So I heard the speeches anyway.
Thank you so much for that. നിങ്ങളത് കാണട്ടെ, കുറെ കാലമായി കണ്ടിട്ട്. നിങ്ങളുടെ മുഖം ഒന്ന് കാണട്ടെ. വ്യത്യാസം വല്ലതും ഉണ്ടോ അറിയണ്ടേ കോവിഡ് ഒക്കെ ആയിട്ട്?
I had COVID here. 15 days I was in hospital. 15 days, me and my wife and my daughter in the hospital for 15 days.
Don't tell me, nobody knew about it. Aljas, you know about this?
Yeah, I knew.
നിങ്ങൾ ഇങ്ങനെ നല്ല കാര്യമല്ലാത്തോട് പറയില്ലായിരിക്കും അതുപോലെ.
കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് 10 days ക്വാറന്റൈൻ ആയിരുന്നു. അത് കഴിഞ്ഞ് 10 days 1 month പോയി. താങ്ക്സ് ടു കോവിഡ് എന്റെ 1 month പോയി.
Oh my god. Complications ഒന്നും വന്നില്ലല്ലേ? പക്ഷേ
1 month out. Oh sorry.
No complications. Right?
Really everything 50% level. Yeah, everything 50%. Only thing is my lungs have to improve. I have to do that pranayama and catch up.
Oh my god. ആ ലെവലിലേക്ക് എത്തിയല്ലേ?
How do you feel now? Breathing issues എന്തെങ്കിലുമൊക്കെ ഉണ്ടോ? സ്റ്റെപ്പ് എല്ലാം കയറുമ്പോൾ
ഒരു ഫ്ലോർ കയറുമ്പോ ഒരു 3 ഫ്ലോർ കയറിയ ക്ഷീണം.
Oh shit. That's a problem.
3 floors കയറിയ ക്ഷീണം.
My god.
3 floors വരെ കുഴപ്പമില്ല.
അല്ല ഒരു ഫ്ലോർ
അത് പലരും പറയുന്നു ഒരു സ്റ്റെപ്പ് കയറാൻ പറ്റുന്നില്ലെന്ന്.
He's not affected that badly. That is why.
That's what. 1 floor കയറിയ.
ഏത് ഹോസ്പിറ്റലായിരുന്നു ഇവർ?
He was in KIMS Trivandrum. I went for a function there. I didn't go. Me and my wife, we were in KIMS for 15 days.
My God.
And gave it to my brother, his wife, his daughter, gave it to my driver, gave it to one of my close friends, my daughter. 10 പേര് ഞാൻ കൊടുത്തു gift.
Oh my God. Oh my God. ഈ 7000 800 എന്നൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞതിൽ 10 നിങ്ങളായിരുന്നല്ലേ?
ട്രിവാൻഡ്രം മാർക്കറ്റ് എന്ന് കേട്ടപ്പോഴേ അല്ലേ?
Happened in 2 hours. I was not with these people.
Jokes ഒക്കെ പറയുന്നെങ്കിലും സംഗതി
At least good to see that all of you are well. At least you're all out of it, അല്ലേ? Thank God for that.
Yeah.
Thank God. Anyway, good. Take care, all of us. Let's not be very
Okay,
adventurous
thank
like what
you.
Dinesh was saying.
Thank you all. Wish you a great year.
Yeah, same. Thank you so much, Lava. Thanks a lot for coming in.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Okay,
Bye.
ഇനി കളി
Bye.
കാണാം.
Good night. Good
Thank
night.
you all. Bye-bye. Good
Good
night.
night. Take care.
Bye.
Good night, sir. Can I?
Yes, Jaman. ഇവിടെ ഇതാരാണ് ഈ ഗിരിജ ശ്രീകുമാറാണ്? അതും കളഞ്ഞ കമ്പനി പ്രശ്നമില്ലല്ലോ. I just removed. ആരാന്നറിയാതെ നമ്മൾ എന്തെങ്കിലും എടുത്ത് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട്
വിവേക് ഇറങ്ങിയ
വിവേക് പോയി.
പ്രസിഡന്റ് അപ്പൊ താങ്ക് യു.
കുഴപ്പമില്ലായിരുന്നല്ലോ അല്ലേ? ഐ തിങ്ക് ബെറ്റർ ഫെൽ. ആക്ച്വലി ഒരു ഒറ്റ പ്രശ്നമുള്ളായിരുന്നു. നമ്മള് ശ്രീകുമാറിന് ആദ്യം കൊടുത്ത അബദ്ധമായിപ്പോയി. പുള്ളി ഒരു ലോങ്കിഷ് സ്പീക്കറാണ്. അപ്പൊ ഇങ്ങനെ പുള്ളി എത്തിക്കാനായിട്ട് കുറച്ച് സമയം എടുക്കും. അപ്പൊ നിങ്ങളൊക്കെ ഈ ബ്രിസ്ക് ആയിട്ട് പോയ പോലെ പോയില്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു പാനൽ ഡിസ്കഷന്റെ എഫക്ട് വരില്ല. പുള്ളിയുടെ
പ്രോബ്ലം ഐ എം ദ കൾപ്രിറ്റ് ബിക്കോസ് ഞാൻ വിവേകിനെ 5 മണിയായി വിളിച്ചിട്ട് പറഞ്ഞു ടാക്സ് വളരെ ടെക്നിക്കൽ ആയതുകൊണ്ട് സ്പെസിഫിക് ആണ്. ഞാൻ PPT ഉണ്ടാക്കാതെ ഒരു പ്രസന്റേഷൻ ചെയ്യത്തില്ല. അപ്പം അത് ചിലപ്പോൾ ടാക്സ് ബോറാണ്ടെന്ന് വിചാരിച്ചു കൊടുത്തു. പുള്ളി ഒത്തിരി ജനറിക് നോട്ടിലാണ് പോയത്.
അല്ല, നിങ്ങളുടെ PPT നല്ലതാണ്, കാരണം ഡെഡ് ലൈൻസും പോയിന്റ്സും കാണിക്കാനായിട്ട് ഒരു സ്ലൈഡ് കാണിക്കാം. പക്ഷെ ഹി വാസ് ഓൺ എ സ്പീച്ച് മോഡ്, നോട്ട് ഓൺ എ പാനൽ ഡിസ്കഷൻ മോഡ്. തെറിവിളി അല്ലാത്ത എല്ലാം കിട്ടി. SR ചീത്ത പറയുന്ന ഒരു വഴിക്കൂടെ വേറെ വഴിക്കൂടെ വിവേകിനെ അതിനിടെ കൂടെ പൊരിച്ചപ്പുറത്തിട്ട് ഹോംവർക്ക് ചെയ്യാതെ വന്നും പറഞ്ഞിട്ട്. കാരണം അതൊരു ഈ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ ഒരു സ്പീച്ച് മോഡിലായി പോയി. ജോമൻ പോയാ കേട്ടായ ജോമൻ ഫ്രീസ് ആയോ? കേട്ടാ പറഞ്ഞേ കേട്ടാ? നിങ്ങൾ കട്ടായി പോയി.
പകുതി ഇടയ്ക്ക് ബ്രേക്ക് ആയി. ഇവിടെ സിഗ്നൽ
നിങ്ങൾ ഇടയ്ക്കൊന്ന് ഫ്രീസ് ആയി. ഞാനിടയ്ക്ക് വിവേനോട് ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞ ഇടയ്ക്ക് വെച്ച് നിർത്താൻ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ എടുത്തു. ഓക്കെ ബൈ. ശരി പ്രജിത്ത്, ശരി. മറ്റേ ഫീഡ്ബാക്ക് ഫോംസ് എനിക്കൊന്ന് കാണിച്ചു തരണേ. എത്രണ്ണം ഉണ്ട്? മൊത്തം എത്രണ്ണം വന്നു?
26.
നോട്ട് ബാഡ്. അത് അടുത്ത് ഫയൽ ചെയ്യണം നമുക്ക്.
25. 25.
ഗുഡ്, വെരി ഗുഡ്. ദാറ്റ്സ് നോട്ട് ബാഡ്. എങ്ങനെയുണ്ട് പൊതുവെ? എന്താ പറഞ്ഞേക്കുന്നത്? തെരുവെല്ലാം പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ടോ?
ഇല്ല, നല്ല ഒപ്പീനിയൻ ആണ്.
ഓക്കെ ഫൈൻ.
നല്ല ഫൈൻ. ചീത്ത ഉണ്ടെങ്കിലാണ് നമ്മൾ ഇംപ്രൂവ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്.
ചീത്തയാണ് നമുക്ക് അറിയേണ്ടത്. വല്ലതും ഉണ്ടോ എന്ന് അറിയണം. എഴുതാൻ വേണ്ടി എഴുതി വേണ്ട.
58% നോൺ മെമ്പേഴ്സ് ആണ് അറ്റൻഡ് ചെയ്തത് KMA. പിന്നെ എക്സലന്റ് ആണ് ഓവറോൾ. ഹൗ റേറ്റ് സ്പീക്കേഴ്സ് എക്സലന്റ് ആണ് തന്നേക്കുന്നത്. 5 ആണ് തന്നേക്കുന്നത്. പിന്നെ വാസ് ദ ടോപ്പിക് റെലവന്റ് എന്നുള്ളത് യെസ് ആണ്. 95%.
ഓക്കെ, അതാണ് അറ്റൻഡൻസ് വരാൻ കാര്യം. അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് ടോപ്പിക് റെലവന്റ് ആണ് അറ്റൻഡൻസ് വന്നത്.
Yeah, would you like to attend the similar programs? Yes ആണ് 84%. 16% maybe.
ടോപ്പിക്കിന്റെ റിലവൻസിലാണ് ആ ക്രൗഡ് വന്നത്.
അതെ, ടോപ്പിക് ആണ് 95% ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റ് കാണിച്ചിരിക്കുന്നത്. പിന്നെ വരുന്ന ഹൗ വാസ് ദ ഓവറോൾ കോർഡിനേഷൻ? എക്സലന്റ് ആണ്. 64% എക്സലന്റ്. ഗുഡ് 32%.
ഓക്കെ. എന്തെങ്കിലും കമന്റ്സ് എന്തെങ്കിലും വശപ്പശായിട്ടുണ്ടോ? ആരെങ്കിലും എന്തെങ്കിലും എഴുതിയിട്ടുണ്ടോ?
എഴുതിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഞാൻ സാറിന് അയച്ചുതരാം.
ഓക്കെ, ശരി. അപ്പൊ ക്ലോസ് ചെയ്തോ. ബൈ. ഗുഡ് നൈറ്റ്. ടേക്ക് കെയർ. ഓക്കെ, സ്റ്റേ സേഫ്. എല്ലാവരും മാസ്ക് കിട്ടുക. നിങ്ങൾ അതിനകത്ത് ഓഫീസിൽ ഇരിക്കുമ്പോൾ മാസ്ക് കിട്ടുന്നില്ലേ? അല്ല, ഉണ്ടല്ലോ അല്ലേ? കാരണം അവന്മാര് റെയ്ഡ് നടത്തുന്നുണ്ട് അവിടെയൊക്കെ. നമ്മുടെ കുറെ പേരുടെ ഓഫീസിൽ കയറി റെയ്ഡ് നടത്തിയിട്ട് ഫൈൻ അടിച്ചു കൊടുത്തു. ഓഫീസിനകത്ത് കയറി ഫസ്റ്റ് ഫ്ലോറിൽ കയറിയിട്ട് അവരത് ഫോട്ടോ എടുക്കും. പെട്ടെന്ന് കയറി ടക്ക് 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 ഫോട്ടോ എടുക്കും. നമ്മൾ ഇരിക്കുന്ന ഇരിപ്പില്ല. എന്റെ ഓഫീസിലല്ല, നമ്മുടെ വേറെ 1-2 പേരുടെ ഓഫീസിൽ. താഴെ വന്നു പറഞ്ഞു. താഴെ വന്നപ്പോൾ അവർക്ക് മാസ്ക് വെച്ചിട്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. വേറെ നമ്മുടെ ഒരു ടോം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ മെമ്പറിന്റെ ഓഫീസിൽ പോയിട്ട് കയറി ഫോട്ടോ എടുക്കുകയാണ്. ഫോട്ടോ എടുത്തിട്ട് പോലീസ് സ്റ്റേഷനിൽ കടവന്ത്ര സ്റ്റേഷനിൽ പോയി കാണണം നാളെ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് പോവാം. എഴുതി കൊടുത്തിട്ട് പോവാം.
വേണമെങ്കിൽ സ്കൂട്ട് ചെയ്യാം. വിൽ കണ്ടിന്യൂ.
ഓക്കെ,
കോൾ ദി പ്രസിഡന്റ്.
നോ പ്രോബ്ലം. ശരി, ഓക്കെ, ടേക്ക് കെയർ. ഓക്കെ, സൂക്ഷിക്കണം കേട്ടോ. കൈ കഴുകലും മൂക്ക് പിടിക്കലൊന്നും വേണ്ട കേട്ടോ. മൂക്കാണ് ശ്രദ്ധിക്കണ്ട. രക്ഷപ്പെട്ടെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ മതി. ജസ്റ്റ് തടിയൂരി കിട്ടിയെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ മതി. അതാണ് നമ്മൾ ഈ മാസ്ക് ഒക്കെ വെച്ച് ഒരു പരുവത്തിലൊക്കെ നിൽക്കുന്നോണ്ട് രക്ഷപ്പെട്ടോ. അല്ലെ പണി കിട്ടിയാണ്. ഞാനും പേടിച്ചു. ഞാനാന്ന് അന്നയാളോട് അവിടെ നിന്ന് പേന എടുത്ത് അവിടെ എഴുതി വെച്ചു. ഞാൻ എല്ലാ ദിവസവും ബുക്കിൽ എഴുതി ഇയാളുടെ കീഴി വന്നാ എഴുതിക്കാനായിട്ട്. എല്ലാം കഴിച്ച് വെച്ചാൽ പോയതാണ് ലാസ്റ്റ് ഡേയിൽ. എനിവേ
താങ്ക്ഫുള്ളി അത് നമുക്ക് ഒരു അവധി കിട്ടിയില്ല. അതാണ് നമുക്ക് ബെനിഫിറ്റ് ആയത്. എന്താ വെച്ചാല് 28-ാം തീയതിയാണ് പുള്ളിക്ക് പനി വന്നത്. 29-ാം തീയതി നമുക്ക് അവധിയായി പോയി.
അതെങ്ങനെ ഇരിക്കുന്നത്? ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടോ ആവശ്യങ്ങളെല്ലാം ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ നോക്കണം കേട്ടോ. പറയുന്നെങ്കിലും നമ്മുടെ ആളല്ലേ.
ബ്ലഡ് ഛർദിക്കാൻ തുടങ്ങി എന്ന് പറയുന്നുണ്ട്. ബ്ലഡ്
ചുമ്മാ ബ്ലഡ് ഛർദിക്കുന്നു.
അതെനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു
ചുമയുണ്ടോ?
പ്ലസ് വൊമിറ്റിംഗ് ഉണ്ട് പുള്ളിക്ക് ഭയങ്കരമായിട്ട്. അതുകൊണ്ട് വൊമിറ്റ് ചെയ്ത്
വീട്ടിലാണോ ആശുപത്രിയിലാണോ ഇപ്പൊ?
വീട്ടിലാണ്. വീട്ടിൽ തന്നെയാണ്.
ശ്വാസമുട്ടലൊന്നും
ഇല്ല. സോഫാർ ചുമയും ഛർദിലുമാണ്. ടെമ്പറേച്ചറാണ് മെയിൻ പ്രോബ്ലം.
ഛർദിൽ അത്രയും വേണ്ട കാര്യം എന്താ? കോവിഡ് തന്നെയാണോ?
കോവിഡ് പോസിറ്റീവ്.
അതല്ല, പക്ഷേ ഛർദിൽ അത്രയും വരാനുള്ള വകുപ്പ് ഇല്ലല്ലോ അതിനകത്ത്.
ഛർദിലില്ല, വൊമിറ്റിംഗ് ടെൻഡൻസി ഉണ്ട്.
ഒന്നും കഴിക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നില്ലേ? കഴിക്കാനൊന്നും പറ്റുന്നില്ലേ? വെള്ളമൊക്കെ ശരിക്കും കുടിക്കാൻ പറയണം കേട്ടോ. വെള്ളം ശരിക്കും കുടിക്കാൻ പറയണം, പണി കിട്ടൂല്ലെങ്കിൽ. ശ്വാസം മുട്ടലുണ്ടോന്ന് മാത്രം നോക്കിയാൽ മതി. ശ്വാസം മുട്ടലുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ മാത്രം പണി കിട്ടും. അത് നോക്കി, ബാക്കിയൊക്കെ സമാനമുള്ള കാര്യം. അതൊക്കെ വേറെ അസുഖങ്ങളൊന്നും ഇല്ലല്ലോ അല്ലേ? ഡയബറ്റീസ് ഉണ്ടോ?
ഇല്ല.
ഷുഗർ ഇല്ല കേർക്ക്? ഉറപ്പാണോ?
ഉറപ്പാ.
അല്ല, നോക്കണം, അന്വേഷിക്കട്ടെ. എന്തെങ്കിലും ആവശ്യം ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ പറയാം, നമുക്ക് നോക്കാം. ഓക്കെ, ഗുഡ് നൈറ്റ്, ബൈ.